Hello, we will begin the 14th lecture on church history. Number 14, the Reformation in England. Number 1, the characteristics of the Reformation in England. The English Reformation was not focused on doctrine and theology. It focused on government and church law. Number 2, the cause of the Reformation in England. Henry VIII had trouble with the Pope because of his marriage issue. Henry VIII wanted to marry Catherine, his older brother's wife, but church law did not acknowledge marriage. However, the king ended up marrying Catherine. For 15 years, the king had no children other than Mary. When he did not have any children apart from Mary for 15 years, Henry VIII asked the Pope to declare this marriage is not in God's will. However, the Pope rejected his request. Then, in 1533, Henry VIII married Anne Boleyn, the court lady. The Pope disapproved of the marriage. This became the cause of the Reformation in England. Number 3, methods of reform. Ties with the Pope and established the Anglican Church. Then, in 1535, he announced the Act of Supremacy. This act said that the head of the church was not the Pope, but was the King of England. They also prohibited paying taxes to the Pope and requesting trials from him. The king disbanded monasteries and returned that money to the royal family. Even as he did this, Henry VIII, in terms of religion and theology, followed after Catholicism. For this reason, he burned people who denied transubstantiation at stake. Number 4, the religious policies of the Anglican Church. At this time in Europe, Protestantism and Catholicism shared a hostile relationship. In England, both sides were oppressed. They stressed that people must submit only to the Anglican Church. Then, in 1559, the Act of Supremacy was passed by the Parliament. Then the Book of Common Prayer was adopted. During communion, bread was passed to common people as well. Crosses, altars, and images were removed from churches. As for clothing, they wore uniforms. However, they applied many Roman Catholic rituals. In 1563, the 39 Articles were adopted. The details about communion found in the 39 Articles were similar to Calvin's idea of communion. The Articles were more progressive than Roman Catholic ideas and more close to Protestantism. But in the end, the Reformation in England focused on rituals. It was for this reason the Puritan movement, which was against it, began. Number 5. Figures related to the English Reformation. Henry VIII. Henry VIII was born in 1509 and died in 1547. Upon the request of Pope Leo X, he banned books written by Martin Luther. But because of his second marriage, he and the Pope had a bad relationship. This became the cause of the Reformation. Henry VIII acknowledged the 7 sacraments of Roman Catholicism as they were. Number 2. Thomas Cranmer. Thomas Cranmer was a key figure of the English Reformation. When Henry VIII had a conflict with the Pope because of his second marriage, Cranmer thought, "This is a good opportunity," and he sided with Henry VIII. He was liked by Henry VIII, and in 1533 he became the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is England's representative church, and he also served as palace pastor. After Henry VIII died, Edward VI succeeded him as king, and because Edward VI became king at a very young age, Thomas Cranmer served as regent and carried out the Reformation. It was during this time that worship rituals changed, and English was used in worship instead of Latin. He permitted clergymen to marry. He wrote a prayer book that was based on Calvinism, and he also drafted the 42 Articles. Cranmer frequently exchanged letters with John Calvin. As bishop of an important church region, he did work in the assignment of Protestant believers. After Edward VI's death, Mary ruled as queen. It was during it was at this time Thomas Cranmer was burned at the stake for treason and heresy. Number 3, William Tyndale. William Tyndale was born in 1494 and died in 1536. Studied at the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge. He was the first person to translate the Bible to English. However, he was condemned as a heretic and was hanged. Number 4, Edward VI. Edward VI ruled as king from 1547 to 1553. He was the son of Henry VIII, who became king at a young age, and for this reason Thomas Cranmer and his uncle Somerset served as regent. Thus, he possessed Calvinist ideas. He assigned Protestants to serve in important church managing positions. He invited theologians and appointed them university professors. Number 5, Queen Mary I. She was born in 1516 and died in 1558. Mary I was the daughter of Henry VIII. When Edward VI died, she began oppressing Protestants in order to restore England to a Catholic nation. She arrested Protestant pastors and bishops and burned them to death. For this reason, she was called Bloody Mary. Number 6, Elizabeth I. Elizabeth I ruled from 1558 to 1603. She was the daughter of Henry VIII. She ruled England for 40 years. This was the period of England's greatest revival. Elizabeth emphasized obedience to the Anglican Church. It was during the age of Elizabeth that Puritanism saw a big rise. In this way, the English Reformation happened in the hands of Henry VIII and his sons and daughters. Number 15. Germany before the 30 Years' War. Number 1. The Schmalkaldic War. This war happened from 1546 to 1547. It was a war between Protestant princes and Catholicism's Karl V. Let us take a look at this war. In 1501, Protestant princes formed a league at Schmalkalden. In reaction to this, Karl V of the Holy Roman Empire allied with the Pope and the Spanish military to fight in the war. Moritz, the Duke of Saxony, was formerly a Protestant, but he sided with Emperor Karl V. Consequently, the Protestants suffered a huge defeat. Number 2. The Interim Confessions of Augsburg. There was a reason for this declaration. Fearing that the emperor was becoming more powerful, the Pope called for reinforcements. In 1548, the emperor, hearing this news, that he would in his own power clean religion up. Doing so, he put forth this confession. The details are as follows. Church officers may marry. Common believers will receive wine during communion. The 7 sacraments will be kept as they are. Mass for the dead is acknowledged. The good deeds of saints are acknowledged. These things followed after the Roman Catholic system exactly as it was. However, they weren't well followed in places outside of southern Germany. Number 3. The Peace of Augsburg. Moritz and other renegades repented. In 1552, they attacked the emperor and won. After their victory over the emperor, a national assembly was convoked, and on September 25, 1955, Protestants and Catholics came to an agreement. The terms of the peace are as follows. Roman Catholic believers, adherents of the Augsburg Confession, and the Lutheran Church all have the same rights. However, they did not acknowledge all Protestants. They excluded the Calvinists and Zwinglians at this council. Also, if there is a state, the people must have the same faith as the state prince. If someone does not have the same faith as the state prince, then he must sell his possessions and move to a different state. Number 4, Karl V abdicated in 1556. Karl V gave Spain, India, the Netherlands, and Italy, all areas that he possessed, to his son Philip II, and the position of Holy Roman Emperor was given to his younger brother Ferdinand I. In 1564, Ferdinand I turned the throne over to his son Maximilian II. Number 16, the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was a war over faith and doctrine between Catholics and Protestants. Catholics and Protestants each other over their doctrines. For the German Empire, the war was more political than it was religious. The war lasted from 1618 to 1648. Number 1, the cause of the war. Emperor Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire gave Protestants freedom. However, when Ferdinand II, who was a Catholic, became emperor, he began persecuting Protestants. The Protestant reformers did not give in, but they challenged Catholicism and fought a war for 30 years. But there is an immediate cause of the war. King Gustav II of Sweden actively supported Protestants in the Catholic Protectorate of Bohemia. Number 2, the timeline of events of the war. Number 1, the first phase, 1618 to 1623. This war is called the False War. The emperor oppressed Protestants and had them tear down their churches. The Protestants started a war because of this, and they captured Prague. However, the English king did not help the Protestants, which caused the Lutherans to defect in this war. The Catholics won the war. The emperor then chased out Protestant pastors and restored Catholicism. Consequently, 30,000 people sought asylum in foreign nations. Number 2, the second phase, 1625 to 1629. This war is called the Danish War. King Christian IV of Denmark joined the armies of England and the Netherlands to support Protestants, but the army of the German Emperor drove them back. Number 3, the third phase, 1630 to 1635. This war is called the Swedish War. King Gustav II of Sweden invaded with the intention to help Protestants. However, General Wallenstein drove him out. Number 4, the fourth phase, 1635 to 1648. This war is called the French War. In order to keep the power of the King of Germany in check, France helped the Protestant Sweden in attacking Italy. This brought about great confusion to Germany. Consequently, Germany and Protestant princes signed the Peace of Westphalen. Number 3, the results of the war. Because of the war, the entire population was reduced by 1/3. 620 pastors died in battle. Education, politics, economics, and culture were left in ruins. Also, the war brought about the signing of the Peace of Westphalen in 1648. Number 4, the Peace of Westphalen. It is the treaty signed by Germany and Sweden in the 30 Years' War. A. Religious rules. Catholics, Lutherans, and Calvinists all have the same rights. The Church's rights to ownership of property will be returned to the situation of January 10th, 1624. People have the right to freely move. Property cannot be confiscated. The relationship between the Lutherans and the Reformed Church will be in accordance with the situation of the time of the signing of the peace. B. Political rules. Sweden will approve of the independence of the Netherlands. Germany will approve of the independence of Sweden. Sweden will be given a part of Pomerania and the island of Rügen. Receives Metz, Toulouse, Verdun, and Alsace. Europe's nations may freely unite with one another, and they may conclude pacts with one another. Number 17, Arminianism and the Synod of Dort. 1. Jacob Arminius. Jacob Arminius was born in 1560 and died in 1609. He was from the region of Oudwater in the southern part of the Netherlands. He studied abroad in Geneva, and in 1588 he became a pastor in Amsterdam. He was a man of outstanding scholarship and eloquence. When the government asked him to refute Coornhert's ideas, he studied the topic and was then moved by these ideas. In 1603, he became a professor at the University of Leiden and was opposed to Calvin's idea of predestination. Number 2, the differences between Calvinism and Arminianism. A. Calvin argued for total depravity when it comes down to man's corruption, but Arminius claimed that there is free will. B. Concerning predestination, Calvin said God unconditionally elects, while Arminius said that God foreknew who was to be elected. C. Calvin argued for limited atonement with regards to atonement, but Arminius argued for unlimited atonement. D. Calvin claimed that it was irresistible grace, but Arminius said that man can resist God's grace. E. Regarding the perseverance of saints, Calvin said that the Lord protects believers until the end, but Arminius said it is uncertain whether believers will be protected or not. Number 3, the Synod of Dort. The Synod of Dort was convoked to bring an end to the dispute between Calvinism and Arminianism. It was held to reject Arminianism. The Synod was held on November 13th, 1618, in Dort, the Netherlands. 84 members of the National Assembly of the Netherlands attended. Arminius attended. Let us take a look at the Council's resolutions. The Synod decided to banish the people of Arminianism. They chose Calvinism and adopted the Canon of Dort. Arminianism weakened as a result. The Canon of Dort was of great influence in writing the Westminster Confession. Number 18, Socinian Theology. Socinus denied the doctrine of the Trinity and argued for Unitarianism. The Anabaptists and the mystics of the Middle Ages believed in this idea as well. However, Socinus gave more shape to Unitarianism. Number 1, Faustus. He was born in 1539 and died in 1604. He was an Italian noble and lawyer, accepting the will of his uncle Lelio Socinus. He made it his life's mission to deny the doctrine of the Trinity. With this mission, he went to Poland. Nearing the end of his days, Socinus could not finish compiling his creed and catechism, and he ended up dying without completing them. In 1605, Schmaltz completed them and established churches and schools. But in 1638, the Jesuits closed down these churches and schools and banished the people. Number 2, his thoughts. He believed that faith is approving of God's orders and promises. He said that the Bible is a book that teaches doctrine and morals. A. Christology. He emphasized that Christ was a teacher. He denied the doctrine that Christ is fully human, fully divine, and fully human, yet one person. This is to say that he denied that Christ is one person who is both divine and human. He said that Christ was different than other humans because of his miraculous birth. B. Atonement. He denied Jesus' atonement. He said that the doctrine of the Trinity is not necessary for salvation, but very helpful. Number 19, the Greek Church. Number 1, Cyrillus Lucaris. A key figure of the Greek Church is Cyrillus Lucaris. He was born in 1572 on the island of Crete. He became Archbishop of Alexandria in 1602. In 1616, he contacted George Abbot, Archbishop of Canterbury, by writing him a letter. He also donated the Codex Alexandrinus to Charles I, King of England. In 1621, he became Archbishop of Constantinople. He published a Confession of Faith in Geneva, and because of it, he was accused of being a heretic, banished 5 times, and reinstated 5 times. Executed in 1638. Number 2, the Russian Church. Due to the invasion of the Mongols, Russia lost contact with Europe, but Christianity spread widely. B. At first, Kiev was the heart of the church, but in the early 14th century, it was moved to Moscow. C. Patriarch Filaret Romanov. Patriarch Filaret Romanov, with monasteries playing a leading role, was able to calm the confusion. His son Michael Romanov became emperor in 1613. D. Nikon. Nikon reigned as patriarch from 1652 to 1667. As Filaret Romanov tried to reform the Russian Church. He prohibited church officers from drinking, and he installed printing centers to continue the documents movement. He worked to improve church music. E. Peter the Great. Peter the Great reigned from 1682 to 1725. He was a very sincere Christian. He deposed the Patriarch of Moscow, set up the Holy Synod, and became president of the Synod. This concludes the 14th